Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association. Missouri produces wood pallets, railroad ties, white oak barrels, hardwood floors, and more. Details on the variety of products made in the state are at choosewood.com.
We hope you enjoy listening to this podcast of St. Louis on the Air, brought to you by University College at Washington University, with undergraduate and graduate programs part-time, evening, and online. University College at Washington University, offering world-class education within reach.
Welcome to St. Louis on the Air. I'm Don Marsh. Today we have an update from our We Live Here team. Their focus this season has been on St. Louis housing issues. We'll get a preview after an update on an earlier episode focusing on so-called nuisance ordinances. Joining me in studio are producer-reporters Kameel Stanley and Tim Lloyd. Nice to have you both.
Hey.
You're busy as usual. Tim, you were out and about a little bit later than usual last night in the Maplewood City Council meeting, which dealt with an issue you guys have dealt with before, the nuisance ordinances.
Yes. Last night, the Maplewood City Council voted to move forward with a settlement agreement between the city and a lawsuit that was filed by the ACLU on behalf of a woman named Rosetta Watson, who was her occupancy permit was revoked after she had called the police too many times for help to deal with domestic abuse.
All right. And where does that stand now?
The settlement, they went through mediation, and there's a settlement agreement where the city is going to change some things in its ordinance dealing with public nuisances and how that can be used. And Rosetta will receive a cash settlement as well.
Do we know the amount of that settlement?
Close to $140,000.
Oh, that's not bad. Yeah. Kameel, you've dealt with these nuisance ordinances before. Mm-hmm. Bring us up to speed on how what happened last night might affect our friend Latasha, about whom you reported a couple of episodes ago.
So this is not related to Latasha. This is Latasha's suit, which went up to the Missouri Supreme Court, was about rental rights. Ms. Watson's suit was about nuisance ordinances and how they are used in the city of Maplewood, but there are other nuisance ordinances around here in St. Louis.
Wasn't Latasha impacted by a nuisance ordinance, however? Wasn't that the reason for her eviction?
Nope.
It wasn't? No. Well, I've missed the boat on something here.
There's a lot of legal stuff
happening.
There's
a lot of legal stuff
that's
been in our season.
Yeah.
But how this will affect things is the way that Maplewood has operated for the last they put this ordinance in I believe 2006. So for the past 11, 12 years, they've had an ordinance where if you have two or more police calls within 180 days. So 2 or more police calls within 6 months, that can send up kind of a red flag, and the city can find that you are a public nuisance. There's no cutout or special exception if you were maybe calling the police because you were a crime victim. So this is what happened to Ms. Watson. So going forward after this settlement and after their changes to the ordinance are final, what that will mean is that folks who live in Maplewood, which requires occupancy permits to live there, they will no longer just automatic. That process won't be as automatic, and there are going to be new protections to shield people who are crime victims.
Can I just add one more thing too? The other part of this settlement, which is interesting, is that the ACLU will have access to all the nuisance ordinance records. That whole process, and they'll monitor it as well moving forward to flag any sort of potential problems.
And there will be some extra training that that happens with city officials.
Are these nuisance ordinances commonplace in the region?
Oh,
They're commonplace in the country.
Yeah,
and all over the country.
Most municipalities have some sort of nuisance ordinance.
Well, you're going to pick up on this story, I assume, at some point. Where do you intend to go with it?
Picking up on it where?
So tomorrow we drop our most recent episode, which will sort of bring people up to speed on the news around this particular lawsuit and the settlement. We may bump our schedule back a little bit more and keep going deeper into it in our episode after that. We feel like this gets to the heart of what we're doing this season, which is how policy, how culture, all of that, especially on the municipal level, can affect people of color in our region and beyond. Mm-hmm. And this is just a clear example of how those two things are connected.
Kameel, do you feel that your reporting has had some impact on Maplewood and what action it took last night?
I'm not sure. I mean, Maplewood was, the subject of a lawsuit. So I imagine that legal pressure had something more to do with exactly why they made these changes. However, we do know that, a lot of people heard about Miss Watson's story through the podcast, and residents in Maplewood have followed this case as well. So we may have had some part of at least making people more aware of what's going on. But I wouldn't necessarily go so far as saying, the episodes that we did cause them to come to this settlement. They were under legal pressure.
One thing that can be said with pretty clear certainty is that the big difference is Miss Watson and her willingness to put herself out there and be part of this lawsuit. The attorneys for the ACLU will tell you that it was really her and her willingness to tell her story, which is a painful one, is what ultimately led to this resolution.
Right. Well, there are a lot of stories out there, I'm sure, and any person who comes forward may enable others to, or inspire others to come forward, maybe get some of these things changed elsewhere. Mm-hmm. Anything else to add to all of this?
No, just to our listeners, we are working all day today to get you a cool, new, fresh episode about this, and we will keep following this.
Yeah.
Okay. Well, keep up the good work, as we always say, and when you are ready to post your new episode, people will be able to find that where?
Wherever you get your podcasts. I feel like we just have that on automatic.
Go on automatic pilot.
Yeah, that's right.
Well, thanks for bringing us up to speed on this.
Thanks,
I appreciate it. Sorry for my confusion early on. I thought these cases were related.
No, they're not.
Thank you. Kameel Stanley and Tim Lloyd, the We Live Here update team. Remember where you get your We Live Here podcasts, anywhere you get your podcasts. This is St. Louis on the Air on St. Louis Public Radio, 90.7 KWMU.
Support comes from the Missouri Forest Products Association, committed to conservation and careful management of the state's forests to make them more resilient and better habitats for wildlife. ChooseWood.com.